What is the essence of Superman? Dan Jurgens and other writers use imposters to find an answer. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a comic book that I read, a graphic novel, a volume of sorts, and it is all about Superman and robots and Men of Steel. I am referring to The Return of Superman by Dan Jurgens and many other writers, although I think Dan Jurgens is the lead on this story. And this was originally published throughout 1993. I've talked about Dan Jurgens on this channel before. He was largely responsible for the death and return of Superman arc. There were other writers and illustrators, but he was kind of the lead on it. And he wrote for other comic imprints as well, pretty well regarded in the industry. Now, you might recall me saying pretty bad things about the Funeral for a Friend arc, which was a part of this overall arc, and how I didn't think it was good, and I thought it dragged down the story, and it proved that they didn't really have aims for Superman's death. It wasn't an artistic project. It was more of a PR stunt, and I still think that. But I think the series is a little bit better because of what I read here today, and I'll talk more about that when I get to the analysis section. But I don't think it totally saves the overall arc, but I do think that that there is some quality to be found throughout it, and unfortunately, I think this harmed Superman more than it helped. And again, I'll talk more about that later. But I decided to return to it because I had to finish the overarching story. I didn't just want to leave it at Funeral for a Friend because I'm weird like that. But without further ado, let's talk about The Return of Superman. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we'll move on from there. So The Return of Superman picks up where Funeral for a Friend left off. Superman's body has gone missing from a crypt in Metropolis, and a bunch of imposters, or people claiming to be Superman, have shown up. This includes Cyborg Superman, otherwise known as Hank Henshaw, Superboy, who is an imperfect clone of Superman created by Lex Luthor, Steel, who is like the Man of Steel, John Henry Irons, a person who was saved by Superman once and now wants to do some good for the world, and Eradicator, who is a sort of Kryptonian program that is designed to protect Superman. He's going a bit overboard. He's being very violent. But he's claiming to be the real Superman too. And as time goes on, we see Eradicator and Steel get into a fight. Steel manages to survive it, but Eradicator decides to go protect Coast City while Steel has to protect Metropolis. Lois Lane is still sad about Superman dying. She doesn't really do much in this overarching arc, but even in this set of stories, she doesn't really do much. We see Eradicator helping another hero named Loose Cannon, and then a spaceship shows up, led by a man named Mongul, as well as another leader that we don't see initially. And this spaceship blows up Coast City. Cyborg Superman is shown trying to do something. He's talking to the government, and it's eventually revealed that Cyborg Superman is on the side of the aliens and has a vendetta against Superman, and basically wants to take over the world now that Superman is presumed dead. And so, this act of destroying Coast City injures Eradicator, and Eradicator has to go back to the Fortress of Solitude in Antarctica. And then we find out that Cyborg Superman is evil. He lures Superboy to Coast City, and they get into a fight, which Superboy manages to get away and go back to Metropolis. But Cyborg Superman basically lies to the public and says that Superboy has been compromised. Cyborg Superman then sends the Justice League and tells them that there's a rogue Superman element in space. So they're sent off, and they're no longer a threat to Cyborg Superman on on Earth. And then we see that Superman is piloting a giant mech robot thing, the real Superman, who is in fact still alive. He's been brought back by a Kryptonian matrix, and he's in this robot to get back to Metropolis because he's kind of weak at this point. And then we see Superman make it back. Everyone's surprised to see him. Lois is hesitant to believe that it's really him until he says some things that confirm that it could only be him. And then it's an emotional reunion for them. And then Superman and Steel and Superboy decide to go attack the new engine city that's being built in Coast City. So they attack it. Meanwhile, like Superboy and meets a girl, a younger hero named Sparks, and falls in love with her. We see her sort of origin there. And then Steel ends up fighting Cyborg Superman, and Steel sacrifices himself to the machinery to prevent Cyborg Superman from gaining more power and doing bad things to Metropolis. And this results in his suit getting destroyed, but he's still alive, thankfully. And then Superman and the Green Lantern, I believe it's Hal Jordan, who is native to Coast City, try to attack Mongul. Green Lantern is extremely angry and wants revenge for what happened to Coast City. And so Green Lantern ends up defeating Mongul, and then Superman fights Cyborg Superman. Even though Cyborg Superman tries to use a kryptonite ray to kill Superman, it's blocked by Eradicator, who stands in front of it, and then Eradicator gives his remaining power to Superman, which brings him back to his former strength. And then Superman defeats him, and everything is good in Coast City, except for the fact that it's been completely destroyed and everyone is dead in it. Superman goes back to Metropolis. People are still wondering what happened to Clark Kent because his body wasn't found, and so Superman gets Supergirl, who is actually a shape-shifting creature, to pretend to be Clark for a little bit, which he does, and Clark is brought back, thankfully. And then Superman proceeds to save a bunch of people, showing that the hero of Metropolis has returned. And then in the epilogue, we see that Dr. Occult shows Superman how he came to die and how he came to survive, how his father in his coma dream sort of brought Superman back to the real world, and then the Kryptonian Matrix brought him back to life. And Dr. Occult indicates that Superman is capable of dying at this point. He's not immortal, and so he should treasure every day that he has left. He goes and visits his parents, which is a beautiful moment, and Superman also tries to visit Batman, who's actually Azrael, because Batman was broken by Bane at this point. Azrael runs away really quickly, so Superman doesn't get a chance to talk with him. And then we also see a bunch of heroes going back to Coast City to pay tribute to it because of all the people who died. And while that's happening, Lex steals a bunch of kryptonite from the downed spaceship and all of that there, indicating that he's going to become a threat to Superman again in the future. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a fair bit to talk about with the return of Superman. One of the main ideas that Jurgens and the other writers are talking about is the idea of defining Superman. So you've killed off Superman, everyone's mourned him, and you've seen a little bit of what his absence leads to. But what does it mean to be Superman? What are the qualities of Superman that everyone has come to love? And I think what Jurgens and the others do is that they highlight who Superman is by using these imposters to show who he isn't. So you see that Cyborg is, he's a robot for one, but he's also evil. Like, he pretends to be Superman, but he's working with the aliens, which is something Superman would never do. And then Steel is very noble as a Superman imposter, but he is too human. He can't do what Superman can do. He can't survive what Superman can survive. So he's particularly vulnerable and he's a good hero, but he's not as effective as Superman. Superboy is an arrogant, imperfect clone. He doesn't have all of Superman's abilities, or they don't work on a consistent basis. And he's also a bit of an arrogant teenager. That's not Superman at all. And then Eradicator is overly violent. Superman would never engage in the level of violence that Eradicator does, going so far as to try to murder street-level thugs. It really goes to show what type of person Superman is and how noble and heroic he is. And when he returns, that's doubled down upon, because we see Superman in contrast to these other so-called Supermen. And you see the huge differences, and it really allows us to sort of get a renewed take on Superman, to see who he is and why we loved him in the first place. Jurgens is also talking about rebirth. Superman doesn't just return in this series, even though it's called The Return of Superman. Superman is reborn. He's born anew. You get a new suit. For a little bit, he's wearing a black suit, which can feel a little bit edgy, and I'll talk about that in a few moments. He has a new attitude, much more like, I'm not taking things for granted. He's a bit more aggressive in his nature, and there's even an instance, like a comic panel, where it seems like he's born from the giant mech. As he's coming out of it, he's just like sort of ushered out in a birth, which is kind of silly, but also it depicts exactly what the writers are trying to say, that Superman is new. Like, this is Superman coming back, being born again, and we're seeing a whole new side of him. So good illustration there. And again, as I've said before, it allows for fresh takes as well as new heroes, because now we get to see like Steel and Superboy, this new version of Superboy, and maybe Eradicator down the road. And whoever else came about as a result of this, like Sparks and whatnot. So the super family is really growing. The Metropolis branch of heroes is growing, and it's maybe it won't be the same as the previous comics that had come out of the Superman series. Although I don't really know that for sure, because I haven't read what comes after the Death and Return of Superman arc. As I've said before, it does seem a little bit edgy, like it's trying too hard to be radical and cool and edgy and very 90s in its way. Like Superman comes back with a black suit. He's using guns now, which again, it makes sense because he's weaker, but Superman has never used guns before. At least that I can't recall. So it doesn't really seem like Superman. It seems like it's trying to be a little bit edgy, appeal to younger readers perhaps. Or maybe those readers who might have turned away from Superman because he wasn't as edgy or he wasn't as popular or cool. So not an ideal sort of version or even vision there. And I'll also say it's weird that Lois Lane doesn't have a lot to do in this particular installment, but throughout the entire Death and Return of Superman arc, like Lois is just there. She, like, maybe that's always what Lois has been, and only the movies have given her more things to do. But in the Funeral for a Friend, all Lois Lane does is cry. And here she's going on a few dates, and she might have done some investigating, but Lois never felt consequential, unfortunately. And so it really just feels like all she's here to do is cry over Superman and reunite with him. Like, there's no beginning or end of her character. She's just an appendage of Superman. That doesn't really seem like that great of writing on my part. I do feel like, especially if this series had gone on longer, you could have sort of had Lois branch out, maybe become a private detective or do something more with her character in that sort of style, in that sort of mindset. But here, it just really doesn't feel like the writers care about her, and it sinks the story a little bit if Lois Lane is just doing the same thing over and over and over every single issue for a year plus. The last thing I'll note is near the end of this, Dr. Occult comes by and shows Superman his death and what happened to him in the sort of afterlife and how he came to return. He specifically notes that Superman can still die, even though Superman thought he was immortal. Like, he's still capable of dying, and so each day is really a gift, and he can't take that to his advantage or anything like that. He can't take advantage of the fact that he won't die, because he will. well. And that's really interesting. Like, it's an interesting way to sort of cap it off. But I do think the problem is the writers, they already killed Superman and brought him back. Like, this could be them saying, oh, we're only going to do it once, but you already did it here. So I don't really have a reason to really trust the writers. I can't really take that seriously, because what's to stop them from doing the same publicity stunt in the future? And this really does feel like a publicity stunt over art, because I do think the entire purpose was to kill Superman and bring him back really quickly. Because if it was something of more substance, maybe a multi-year arc, like they wouldn't have just brought him back like in the span of a year. It feels too soon, but even more so than that, it feels like there's no real mourning for Superman to happen. It doesn't feel like there was enough time for this arc to really breathe. And so when Dr. Occult comes by and says, like, don't take it for granted, Superman, you're not going to come back to life next time, maybe. I don't really believe that's true. I don't really believe the writers feel that that's true, because all it takes is one writer next time, or even DC Comics as a whole, to say, what if we did another publicity stunt like that and brought Superman back really quickly? I think they did the same thing to Batman, in a later arc, where they killed him off, but they didn't really kill him off. He got stuck in time, and it really sucked the energy out of the overarching character and story and arc that they were going through, because there's a lot of emotion there, but for you to just sort of take that away really quickly, it really nullifies what the readers are experiencing. It sort of takes the stakes out of it if you know that Superman can be brought back really quickly. So, yeah, I ultimately, I'd say this is a really bad arc. Like, I didn't, overarching Death and Return of Superman, not really good, especially because it wasn't allowed to breathe. And if you let this go on longer, the impact of bringing him back down the road could have been much greater. It could have been like, oh, here's a huge return. Here's our hero finally come back at last to save us from these widespread events. It doesn't necessarily need to be like Coast City being destroyed or anything like that. You could have had things build up to that point, but instead they chose not to. And while I will say it's a bad arc, I do think there are good stories present, like the death of Superman in particular, really well written, really well illustrated. And I do think this is a good volume. I like the return of Superman. It's very emotional. It's a very big moment. I just wish, it had happened a little bit differently. I wish there was that it was done with a grander meaning rather than just this quick PR stunt. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the return of Superman. I've made it through the entire arc, and again, I'll say I didn't really like the arc, but I did like the stories here. So yeah, I highly recommend that you seek out maybe the death of Superman and the return. I don't recommend anyone read Funeral for a Friend. It is very bad, and it ultimately goes nowhere. So yeah, just check out some of these. You don't have to check out the entire arc. But yeah, if you have any thoughts or you want to comment on my review, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this series, this story, or these writers if they don't already know. Also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, TV, that sort of thing. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and resurrecting based travels. Farewell.